Hey, how's it going? This is Alberto, and I want to welcome you to this week's episode on the AB Leadership Podcast. Man, we're so excited that you are tuning in, whether you're listening on Spotify, iTunes, or you're watching on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. And hey, if you're not subscribed to us on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe on YouTube or subscribe on iTunes or Spotify. And then do us a favor, leave us a comment because we want to hear from you. We want to hear how it maybe helped you, how it's challenged you, and maybe some ideas that you might have for an episode. And also, as you comment and like, it gives us more visibility as well, and we want to reach as many people as we can. I'm excited about this week's episode, but before I do that, I want to resource you with a good book. Maybe you're in charge of church communications, maybe officially, unofficially, or you're in charge of the church social media, or you're trying to get something together. Wherever you are at, I would challenge you to get this book. I had a friend recommend it to me called Rethink Communication by Bello. It is an incredible book. Our communications team is going through it because we want to get better at what we do, and I guarantee you this has templates and things that are going to help you in your church. Whether you have a mega budget or you're in the negative, it's going to help you. So be sure to get the book and it'll bless you. I'm particularly excited to have a conversation that we're going to have today. Have one of the coolest people on the planet Earth. My best friend, Pastor JC Mejia, is with us today, and we're going to be having a conversation about leadership and ministry. Pastor JC, welcome.
It's good to be here, my man.
Man, it's so good to have you. Looking good as always. Most fashionable, conscious person I know.
We know that's not true.
We were literally having that conversation before we started recording.
Yeah.
Man, well, it's good to have you. Hey, JC, tell us a little bit about where you're at and what you do.
Delano, California. Dad is senior pastor, and I'm kind of revitalizing the church right now. And the church is called Vida Church Delano, which is kind of a Spanglish idea.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of a international community, so to speak. And so you have a lot of bilingual folks there in our city. So we wanted our name to currently reflect that.
That's awesome. And I'll go ahead and brag a little bit on his pedigree. Obviously, he's pastoring a great church in a great community. He was also a youth pastor associate at Brooklyn Tabernacle in New York, and also a youth pastor at a church here in town in Bakersfield called Canyon Hills.
Yep.
So you've had a long, I don't say long legacy because, you're only 21.
Yeah,
21.
I'll take that.
But you've had a lot of ministry experience in working in different contexts, large churches and different things like that, church in the city, church in the burbs. So it's awesome. Hey, I know that you and I are constantly having conversation on the phone, via text, in person. And one of the things that I know that you and I have been talking about sort of off the record has been a few things that deal with insecurity, comparison, friendship circles, and stuff that kind of flows in that vein. And so I guess, man, one of the things that I was thinking of having a conversation today would be about just that. So my question to you would be, man, how do you, as a pastor, as a leader, as a husband, how do you deal with insecurity in ministry, and how do you even process that?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to say insecurity in ministry, but I don't think there's insecurity in ministry. There's only insecurity in individuals. And so,
did y'all catch that? You better tweet that.
It's my personal insecurity that goes into ministry. It's my personal insecurity that goes into my marriage and my relationships and whatnot. It's my own insecurity that's in my own head.
Yeah.
And I think if there is going to be insecurity in ministry, it has to do with how I'm managing my own headspace and making sure that I'm actually aware of it. I think the first step would be awareness. Yeah. You got to be aware that you're insecure.
Yeah.
And if I'm not aware, then it just begins to kind of creep in and take over, and it begins to affect my language and my leadership and so forth.
No, I think that's great. I think obviously with social media being the way that it is, and we're always looking, you have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snap, there's all these different veins in social media, and we're constantly marketing ourselves. However you want to play it, we're marketing our brand, we're marketing our ministry, we're marketing our family, our marriage, we're always putting our stuff out there. So we definitely know that there's a lot more temptation in dealing with insecurity.
Yeah.
And I feel that I've had to wrestle with insecurity because of social media, right? I think Stephen Furtick said basically a lot of times we compare our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel,
right.
And so we're not comparing ourselves on on level playing field, and we're comparing ourselves, which is ridiculous anyways. But I feel that insecurity in ministry now, say 10 years ago, is at a higher level than ever before. I definitely think it affects relationships, connectivity, partnership, and all that kind of stuff. And I think, on the level that you perceive is the level that you receive. Yeah. I think Stephen Furtick said that. I think we were together when we heard him say that. Yeah. And now, so with that, what have you noticed? If people struggle with insecurity, if you struggle with insecurity, then that means that you're constantly thinking that way. So eventually you become. How does that look? How do we project that on people?
I think one mentor told me years ago, if you compare and you compete, you will live in defeat. So,
wow, tweet that.
So you don't want to be comparing. And so I think the antithesis or the opposite to comparison is seeing yourself as being a contributor. And so sometimes you can either look at yourself as a contributor or as a competitor. And so I'm just contributing to a bigger picture. And in our context, it's kingdom. And if it's about competition, then how am I one-upping you, or how are you one-upping me?
Yeah.
And that'll either do one of two things. Either I'm going to rise up with arrogance and try to do something that's better than you.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to shrink away in reluctance and be like, well, I can't compete with that, so I'll just stay silent. And so those are probably the two biggest manifestations of insecurity is really exaggerated exaggerated arrogance and self-promotion and so forth. And the other side of insecurity manifests itself in reverse arrogance, which is kind of like we just don't say anything. There's a reluctance. We're kind of hiding in the corner, being a wallflower. Yeah. And I think what breaks that, it makes the playing field much more viable and much more healthy, is when we see ourselves as contributors. I may not be saying anything new, but I'm bringing something to the table for my friends and my family and my church, and for those on the outside and those that are near.
Yeah, that's good. I like that, the contributor aspect, and to look at it through that lens. I feel that one of the things that I always say when dealing with like our department heads or our staff and our team is the way you counter a culture of insecurity is by having a high culture of honor.
Yeah.
And it seems that it's easy for us in ministry to honor those that are way above us, but it's often hard to honor those that we feel are on the same level as us or a few steps ahead of us. Yeah. And I feel that the lack of honor really elevates the level of insecurity, which leads to so many other things. It leads to lack of teamwork. It leads to lack of collaboration, lack of strong friendships, possibly being bonded because of our insecurities. Can you speak into that a little bit?
I think it goes back again to that idea of contribution.
Okay.
And so there are people that due to their numerical influence on social media are going to seem like they're the only ones who can really contribute. And so honor really sometimes can just turn into groveling, if that makes sense. But really when it comes to honor is the definition of honor is to value. And so it's easy to value those who are from afar, and it's easy to take for granted those who are near us. And oftentimes
that's good. Can you say that one more time?
I don't even remember.
Man, well, you rewind it again.
It's easy to value those who are from afar, and it's easy to take for granted those who are near us.
There you go.
And so, where was I?
I don't know, but it was good, man. It was good.
No, it's easy to honor those who are far. And remember, whatever you don't honor, you eventually will lose.
Ooh, that's good.
Oftentimes, we're trying to gain the attention of people who don't even know who we are. They don't even know that we liked that post. They'll never know that we're listening to their messages. And yet God has given us people near us who are for us and are designed to speak into our lives. And it's easy to become familiar and lackadaisical with that individual. And really, when it comes to honor, we're not even honoring people's accomplishments. When we're honoring, we're not really to honor even their name or their fame. We're supposed to honor their office and their purpose and the kingdom purpose that God has put in their lives, and they're for us. And the other thing about honor that's so important is honor is what unlocks God's best in you for me. And so I think what has happened is that we have exchanged honor for fame. And so it's easy to treat people who are famous well, and yet treat each other dishonorably,
so
without
good.
valuing, without We could even get into how sometimes churches treat their own pastors or their own youth pastors or guest speakers and so forth.
Wow, that's absolutely true, man. I definitely resonate with that. Talking about insecurity, we talked a little bit about comparison. I did a podcast on comparison, and one of the things that realizes comparison does one of two things. It creates a level of inferiority or a level of superiority.
Yeah.
So when I compare myself, it'll make me feel less than someone or make me feel better than someone. We're always constantly comparing. How do you deal with comparison in your personal life and ministry?
We all deal with comparison. I think we're human beings, and we're always about, how much do I weigh? How much can I bench? How many people come to my church?
Yeah.
How many people are following? So we're often measuring, and again, it has to come back to this idea of contribution. I'm not here to compare myself, and I'm not here even about myself. If I'm really focused on you, then I'm trying to contribute to you to see you be your best and stay encouraged and doing what God called you to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good. Yeah, man, lately I've been just kind of marinating on this idea. You've probably heard it said, hey, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to find another room.
Yeah.
I always say, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Surround yourself with people that you want to eventually become. And what I've kind of seen, sort of this culture taking place in a lot of young pastors, and I'm 35, I'm young too, is that we want to be better and we want to grow and we want to develop, but sometimes our circles aren't reflective or indicative of that very thing in which we want to see happen in our lives.
Okay.
Why? Because insecurity does creep in, the comparison creeps in, so we surround ourselves with lower level leaders or lower level friends because it makes us feel better about ourselves, because we're always the person who's ahead, whether we have more people in our congregation, more people in our youth ministry, more people in our church plant, more people following us on social media, and we keep our friends below that to make us feel safe and to make us feel confident. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've noticed that, and I think you kind of had, because we've had a conversation about that. Would you speak into that just a little bit?
I think we need to see relationships as being on different tiers. There are those who we fist bump with, and I would consider us peers. And there are, as much as I love you, and as intimate as we are as friends, there are going to be sometimes things that are outside of your pay grade where I need somebody who's got gray hair, a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, and someone who's not afraid to tell me what I need to hear.
Yeah.
But then even on a lateral level, remember what the scripture says in Proverbs, that the wounds of a friend are faithful. And so sometimes insecurity does play into that, is I only want to be around people who aren't going to wound me.
Yeah.
We have to have people in our life who are going to tell us the truth, who are for us, who are going to be objective about our actions, in order that we would continue to see ourselves go to the next level.
Yeah, man, I think that's awesome. I'm really passionate about this. I don't think that there's any, I preached a sermon recently at our church. I don't understand how there's ever room for jealousy or competition in an unhealthy way within the context of the church or in the context of ministry. As a matter of fact, I know that Paul was rebuking the church in Corinth because he said, I wanted to take you, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, to the next level in your spirituality. I wanted to take you from milk to meat, but the reality is that you were worldly. Mm-hmm. And we define worldly sometimes in our churches as they're listening to secular music, they're watching, and I hate that term, secular movies, or their pants are too tight, whatever. We associate worldliness with those types of things, but Paul breaks down worldliness and he says, because there's jealousy and quarreling amongst you. And what always stands out to me is jealousy. And Paul says, look, man, as a church, collectively and even individually, you were going to grow. I was going to take you to a new place. God wanted to take you from a glory to a glory, but we couldn't. You almost regressed because now you're jealous of each other. And man, I feel like that's a stern rebuke. I felt like it was a prophetic declaration where Paul's like, look, God wants to do this, but because of this, we can't. So even in today, man, we see jealousy as being such a big thing amongst ministries and ministers, man. And my heart is that we would be able to put our differences aside, our insecurities down, our jealousies away, be able to honor and love and come together to do something for the kingdom. And I know that's your heart. I know that I've said a lot. Could you speak into maybe the whole jealousy component in ministry and some of maybe what I just said or something else popped into your mind?
I think it comes back to that conversation about honor and honoring people and seeing their worth based on who they are, not what they do. And that old thing that's been said for many years, like we're human beings and we're not human doings. And it's not what we do, it's who we are. And there's no need to be jealous. I think that we need to remember maybe the antidote to jealousy is having a better sense of like self, a better sense of understanding and being self-aware. Like, these are my strengths, but these again are weaknesses. If you don't know your strengths and you don't know your weaknesses, then you're just shadow boxing. You're punching the air because you're not even aware of who you are. You got to know who you are, and you got to know who you're not. And we need to celebrate what we're not in other people so that they are able to complement our weaknesses. And I think that'll help us get past our jealousies and understand, man, we're part of a body. We're part of God's building, jointly fitted together. His body is building living stones, and we make up the body of Christ. And we all need to be comfortable in our lane, in our zone of grace.
Now, I think that was so awesome. I hope you were listening. I want to back up to what you just said, because I know what you just said. Brad Lomenick in his book H3 said the best kind of leaders are self-aware leaders. And basically that's what you just said. Leaders that constantly take inventory of their actions, their emotions, their reactions, their responses. I think it's like David, God, search my heart. If there's any wicked and offensive way, reveal it and remove it. I think David demonstrated that he was a self-aware leader. I think what you just said right now, that the best kind of leaders are leaders who are self-aware. And you ask yourself those tough questions, man, but I got to be honest, there's been moments that I've had to check myself and ask myself that question, and I didn't like the response. I didn't like why I felt the way that I felt, or I reacted the way that I reacted. But I know that if we're going to ever move beyond the current space that we are at within the context of our leadership dynamic, we're going to have to be self-actualized, self-aware leaders that are constantly taking inventory about our actions and our thoughts and our reactions. And so I love that you said that. How do you do that, JC?
A big part of it is my wife, and I'm constantly asking her questions. Like, what am I projecting? How do you think I came off with this? Where do you think I'm at? Literally last night, one of the last things she said to me before going to sleep was, I'm concerned. I said, you're surrounded by a lot of negativity. And I'm like, well, I'm glad to hear that right before we go to sleep. No, now I'm going to be up thinking about that.
Were we talking before she said that?
No, we weren't. But I'm asking her, and then I'm asking my pastor, who is my father, and I'm asking friends, and I'm asking myself, and I'm constantly reflecting on that. And maybe for somebody who's listening right now, let me pray for you. No, I'm kidding. Maybe you're listening right now. Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because that just reminded me. Yeah.
No, we're not even. No. What I'm saying is I think sometimes young leaders don't realize that they have to lead from out of themselves, and that there is a healthy selfishness. Because sometimes I think we can give ourselves, especially when we're in our 20s. And as we're giving ourselves, we don't realize that we're depleting a tank. We're depleting the fuel. And you can only lead from who you are. And if who you are is unhealthy, you're going to lead in an unhealthy way. So we're talking a lot about introspection and self. And I know that there might be leaders out there who say, well, that doesn't sound like Jesus. But remember, Jesus went off by himself to be with the Father.
Yeah, that's good.
Jesus had moments to refill his tank, to get back out and do what he was supposed to do. So I don't want somebody to misconstrue, man, these guys are talking about themselves and thinking about themselves and this and self and self and self. Well, sometimes being selfish, quote unquote, is the most unselfish thing that you can do, so that you're able to give to somebody what it is that they need. And so that's the idea of introspection and being accountable, to make sure that you're not operating in a spirit of jealousy or insecurity or competition.
Wow. That's so good, man. There's just a lot of nuggets in that, a lot of nuggets in this conversation. Pastor JC, man, is there anything else you have for us?
Only if you ask.
Man, when's the album coming out?
Very soon.
Very soon.
Yeah.
Man, well, definitely, Pastor JC, thank you so much for being on our podcast. It was a great conversation. I know we could have gone more and more and more, but people stopped tuning out at 11.3 minutes. So
people start tuning out when I'm halfway through my rambles.
No, but hey, thanks for being on AB Leadership podcast today. Hey, do yourself a favor. Please follow JC at his Instagram account. It's going to come up right here. Boom. Follow him. And then after you're done following him, follow his church. Boom, right there, and stay up to date with what God is doing in him and through their ministry. And once again, we want to thank you for tuning in this week. We look forward to what God's doing in your life and your ministry. Please leave a comment in the comment section below because we want to hear from you. And if you even have any ideas of what you would like us to do, be sure to let us know. We have some great episodes coming up in the next few weeks with some other great leaders. And so we look forward to connecting with you again. Also, please be sure to tune into my wife's Bible study. Hey ladies, she's got it on the channel as well. And I know you'll be blessed by it. So hey, until next time, God bless you guys.